But if I made it too precise, it would become like digital imagery and it would kind of just feel like graphic design. And whilst you could still play with the colors, I think it would sort of just lose a bit of the life. And I really like to have the little bit of wobble so that it does have a sort of more emotive um, connection with people.
Welcome to another episode of Bench Talk. I'm your host, Tom Gerard. This week I'm catching up with Melbourne-based artist Drez. Drez is a mural artist as well as a studio artist who's been having some really impressive exhibitions lately. It was great to delve into this conversation with him and find out a lot more about him. He's came up through painting graffiti, and he evolved into a mural artist, and then expanded his art practice into doing exhibitions and studio work as well. Yeah, I first became familiar with his artwork through his chromatic pulse murals. They're really striking. He works with different tones of colours, and they're really impactful murals. And they're very prolific. They're everywhere around Melbourne, anyway. We delved into his studio practice as well. Found out a lot more about like the 3D sculptural work that he's been making as well, and also his up and coming exhibition with Magma Gallery in Melbourne that opens on June 27th. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. If you want to check out Drez's work while you're listening, check him out on Instagram at d.r.e. Z. And as always, this episode is brought to you by the Art Career Academy, the online school for the emerging artist. Here we go. Episode 199, Drez. So let's kick it off at the beginning. So like, where are you from, and how'd you get into art?
Yeah, so I'm from Melbourne, and I've always sort of done creative stuff. Started painting graffiti when I was 16 or so. A couple of tags when I was younger, but then sort of really started pushing it around that 16 to 18 mark. But I also always played music as well. So I played in a few bands over the years, um, and sort of spent a long time, for probably about 10 years since finishing high school, really pushing that and touring and recording and putting out records and all of this sort of stuff. And then around the sort of COVID period, uh, during all of that music, all the time that I was doing music, I was also doing lots of graphic design and doing album art and poster design and all this sort of stuff, helping with tour campaigns and everything related to releasing music, whilst also doing graph on the side. But then around the sort of years that COVID kicked in and the music industry totally dried up and everything came to a total standstill, all of a sudden I had all this time to basically just do what I wanted to do and just do my own sort of art and do stuff that was purely my head and not related to releases or any sort of external timelines. And that's when I really also started, I guess, branching away from painting classic sort of graffiti letterform style work on walls and branching out into different ways of creating art in public space and thinking about the environment and architecture and figuring out different processes to be able to I guess paint large scale murals just off my own back without support or lifts or money or anything that makes it sort of easier to do those big projects. And so around 2020 I started pushing that, and then I guess I had I don't know, 6 to 12 month period of just going hard and doing heaps of stuff, just ducking around to all the Bunnings and picking up all the mist tints and doing it all sort of from the ground and with big roller poles and all that. And then kind of just started getting busy with commissions. Like all of a sudden, they just started rolling in, and it was kind of like I hit this point where there was a little bit of like there was good feedback and people were enjoying what I was doing, and then a switch just flicked, and it was just commission after commission after commission, and that's kind of that was probably 2021, and since then I've just been busy with that, and then doing gallery stuff as well. So it's kind of like this really nice balance now where you sort of spend 6 months or seven or 8 months doing commission work, and then there's a gallery show and some group shows, and that sort of fills up all of the downtime from painting murals.
Mm. So do you still do music stuff?
I still do music stuff. Yeah, I still play and tour occasionally. It's kind of it's difficult to juggle it all. There's only so much time, and with with creative output, you got to put a lot of work in and a lot of time in to train those muscles and to feel comfortable doing what you're doing. Um, so the doing it all it's hard to do it all lots. You know, kind of got to balance it and figure out what the uh, what the priorities are, or how to I guess prioritize um, between different opportunities.
Mm. And what style of music do you play?
I play soul music. Yeah.
Cool.
Um, yeah.
Great. Would anyone be familiar with your work? Do you want to plug the band, or do you keep it separate from your art?
I kind of keep the two separate. I like to uh, like for the same reason as why I don't show my face. I like to keep for Drez. I like the profile to be purely about the art. And so I think if I was to sort of give away too much about the band, then it'd be pretty easy to find out who I am. And it's kind of fine. Like I'm not trying to hide any sort of nefarious activities on the side. It's more about uh, the art being the center, and I guess sort of stepping away from the personality that comes along with a lot of output that happens these days. I feel like social media and there's a lot of image and a lot of personalities that just sort of like that focus on people as opposed to focusing on output and focusing on work and focusing on connection through work. And I try and keep the focus on the work with Drez, just to not do the other, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. It's like when you've really familiar with someone's artwork, you have no idea what they look like, and then suddenly you see them, and it's like, oh, that person did all that.
For
It's
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and
it's weird. But I know with what you're saying, like with this day and age, though, people, a lot of artists I've seen do focus more on their like building their personal brand as them being the face of the brand instead of their art being the face of the brand.
yeah, and I just think it,
And
I don't know, to me it sort of just misguides the message, like I want people to engage with art and to have their own understanding of it, and to get something from it that isn't sort of like a voyeuristic way of looking at somebody else's lifestyle and what somebody else is doing. I want people to not think about what somebody else is doing and just think about here's some artwork that I like, you know?
yeah,
Uh, so
yeah, I like that.
yeah.
Yeah. So like your work first came on my radar from when you're doing your chromatic pulse murals.
Hmm.
Like they were the first things I saw where it's like, oh, who's this guy? I've probably seen a lot of your pieces as well, but I've been overseas for years, probably when you were really active
Yeah.
then. But yeah, like was if you look back at your older work, can you see the lineage leading up to that?
Um, there's definitely certain elements that correlate. Like I was always pretty experimental with the older work. So I'd try out lots of different styles, do sort of classic New York style graph, and then pretty abstract graph and sort of futuristic stuff and minimalistic stuff. Like I'd really push lots of different styles, and I feel like that that is a thread that sort of carries through. Um, and I guess I mean it's yeah, like I would push different elements and tweak little things here and there. Um, and I still sort of do that now, but it's I guess in a more nerdy or specific extreme sort of way. Whereas that was a little bit more like jumping around a lot and really sort of playing. Um, but yeah, there's definitely some correlations, but I mean, it is sort of quite different. Very like the work that I'm making now is very abstract and very void of imagery or anything literal. Whereas with a lot of the graph that I was doing, it's obviously sort of strong letter form. And even if the letter form was weird, it's like there's really sort of strong constraints to it. Uh, but yeah, there are some correlations for sure.
Yeah, because one thing I did find with you when I first came across your work is that you knew how to paint. That was one thing that was evidently clear.
Hmm.
And then like you knew how to take up space on the wall, and how to work with your materials as well.
Hmm.
I think it was like some pieces under like along the river, along the Yarra,
Yeah,
that I first saw. And then but when I first met you, I was asking you, do you buy all your colors and then sort of work them in from there? And you said no, you usually start with 2 buckets of paint,
yeah,
and then you just mix as you go.
yeah.
And do you still work in that way?
Yes and no. I think it depends on the colors that you're working with. Depending on the pieces, sometimes you can't achieve colors via mixing that way. You really have to work with pure color. Whereas, so depending on what I'm trying to achieve, sometimes you have to do it that way. If you're doing a sort of more monochromatic piece that has a broader shift and it's only, 2 or 3 colors that you're moving through, you can do that. But if you're working with really bright saturated colors like pinks and oranges and let's say purples, as soon as you start mixing them together, it just gets muddy. So you kind of have to work with more bases. Um, but yeah, when I first started, that approach to taking up space and working, um, and I guess knowing how to paint definitely came from graph. Like my whole mentality right at the beginning was, cool, I've been painting graph for forever. I paint 1 or 2 pieces a week, just consistently doing that. And I was like, I could, the first time I did one of these chromatic pulse pieces, it was a background for a graph piece. And I was like, cool, this looks good. Now I have to do a banger on top of that. Fuck, like this is, bit of pressure. And then so the next time I just painted the piece and got rid of the graph. It's like, cool, I'm just doing that. Just going to walk away from it, leave it like that, see how it feels. And then my mentality was just like this way of approaching the space. Um, like if I just do this like I would approach doing throw ups or doing pieces and just go hard with hitting different spots in this way, there doesn't need to be a word for somebody to know that it's me. So it kind of operates in the same way if I, restrict it to this similar structure. Um, so yeah, I don't know, can't remember where the tangent was going, but that transition from graph to it to what I'm, was doing then, there's a very strong similar mentality to how I'd approach those spaces.
And like as you transitioned into fine art and started doing studio works as well,
Hmm.
like something that I found with myself is I had decades of painting graffiti under my belt,
Hmm.
but I had this idea in my head that that was all making art and that I knew how to make art. And then I got in the studio and started working on like artworks for exhibitions, and I realized that although I'd been working with paint and specific materials for so long, like it was a completely different
Hmm.
mindset shift. Yeah. Did you have the same experience?
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, there's so many important factors that go into making art, like your materials, your location, um, and the imagery that you're making. I guess they're the three things, and the experience that people are having. And so when you're doing it on the streets, you have all this context of there's some red bricks over here, or the train lines in front of it, or there's pieces next to it, and so it has this entirely different contextual thing. Whereas when you do it on a canvas, it's completely different. When you go from painting 6 meters wide by 4 meters high to painting 600 mil wide by 400 mil high, and it's like this tiny little thing, like it's a totally different experience, which is sort of something I'm still wrapping my head around to some degree. Um, like you can't treat both spaces the same at all. Um, so
Mm.
it's forever a learning experience, and I'm constantly thinking, all right, great, next exhibition, I'm going to paint this canvas. It's going to be 2.5 meters wide by 3.6 meters. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be huge. It's going to be four of them, and then you're like, you know, start actually figuring out what that looks like in space, and I go, oh yeah, that's a canvas. That is nuts. That is giant. No one's going to ever buy that because it is, so massive. And so yeah, I'm still sort of, figuring out how to move between the spaces for sure.
Mm. Yeah, logistics of big works as well, like moving them around and storage.
Ah,
Oh,
it's a
yeah,
nightmare. Yeah, yeah, I've got a
I
handful in my
know.
studio, and it's like, great, I love these pieces, but they're giant. They don't fit on any of the walls in my house. Like I can't, yeah, what do you do with that? But when you're conceptualizing, it's like, yeah, that's fine. I paint walls 10 times the size of this, no worries, you know? Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel the calling to do lots of big studio works as well,
Hmm.
and like especially when you got shows coming up, you want to do have a couple of big bangers for the show.
For sure.
Um, and what I found I've got two ways of approaching it. One way is I'd do them modular,
Hmm.
so lots of small paintings that make up a big painting,
Hmm.
so you can stack them away and put them in a box or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I make sure I just do it on canvas, and then I can take it off the stretcher bars and
Roll it
roll it
up, put
up,
it
and put it
away.
in the corner.
Yeah.
And then for that big retrospective exhibition that's coming up later in life,
Yeah.
roll it back out.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. Or when people start demanding larger works as well,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I'm definitely, yeah, some of those approaches I've been thinking about for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, but I feel like the work's got to be made.
The
you
work
know,
has to be made, and that's the other
yeah,
side of it. You can't, like, you gotta cater to yourself. There's such a balance between catering to um, what is I guess commercial in the sense that it is actually able to be sold, because you do need you have to make money, otherwise you got to get a job, and then all of a sudden you don't have time to be doing what you want to be doing. Um, And so you got to strike a balance between that, but then also you do need to value the work that you want to make, and to follow that path, because otherwise, if you don't, you're not going to. And if you don't do it, then what are you doing it for? Uh, so it is definitely a
exactly.
balance.
Mm. So, we're talking earlier about how you were painting on the streets, painting on walls and all
Mhm.
this type of stuff. And then commissions started to roll in. Like, what was like the first artwork you ever sold and made money off?
Um, I think technically the first thing that I ever made money off was, I think it was like 2013, and I just painted a handful of pieces in a hostel when I was in Europe, and they gave me free accommodation for a few weeks, and I was like, sweet, I'll paint whatever you want and stay here as long as I can. So that's kind of technically the first thing, but I had an exhibition, I think it was in 2017. I did a bunch of drawings. Um, and one of those drawings would have been the first uh, artworks that I'd sold. Um, but it's kind of a funny one, because I also spent so long doing graphic design, um, and that graphic design was like, it wasn't commercial graphic design. It wasn't. It was all graphic design for musicians in the local music scene, all people that I was friends with, um, and they were coming to me to get my flavor of art and the sort of digital imagery that I was creating. So you could kind of argue that some of that was maybe the first stuff. Like I feel like it's like I've always done creative work, and I've always tried to monetize it or make it somewhat a job, um, since I was 18, since I left school. So it's a bit of a grey area.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. It's
Yeah,
good. I find that once you get, start getting sales under your belt, it really builds momentum,
for sure. But the
like,
I guess the
yeah.
first time that sort of momentum that you're talking about happened was in 2020 or 2021. I'd done a whole bunch of paintings and I released a catalog of work online, that was all kind of related to the chromatic pulse stuff. Um, and that, and I like really heavily sort of promoted that, did a whole bunch of pieces as well to build some momentum online, and then dropped that catalog. And that catalog sold out in, I think it was 5 or 7 days. I think it was 16 pieces. Uh, and that was sort of the first moment that I was like, cool, I just made a bit of money. This is pretty cool. I should do this again. I'm going to plan to do this again this time next year. I'm going to, try and, uh, do that hustle and figure out how to make this a recurring sort of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you do things like that anymore?
Not so often. It's hard to find time. Between painting walls and organizing gallery shows. It's to do that once a year. I would don't think I'd have the time for that at the moment. Um, but I do sort of loosely have plans to do some more online drops and um, do that sort of stuff in the future as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Um, so from seeing your work on Instagram and
Mhm.
online, like digitally, like a lot of people will view your work in that way, as opposed to standing in front of it. I feel like when you're looking at it on a phone, it looks perfect, like it was done,
Mhm.
like it's almost like vectors. But then when you stand up and get up close to it, you can really see like the waver in the hand
Mhm.
and everything. And I love that about your work. I love that it's so precise, yet there's the element of the hand in there.
Mhm.
Is that a deliberate thing for you?
Yeah, that's crucial. Yeah, that sort of the human experience in there is definitely um, something that I don't ever really want to. At the moment, I don't ever really want to get away from. Um, I feel like my work really sits in this world between. Uh, it's kind of like between this op art, really digital, sort of optical, precise uh, set of imagery, and a sort of I guess a more like expressionist, abstract expressionist kind of imagery. And I really want to, this sort of like that modernist purity of medium and the act of creating. And I'm trying to straddle both of those lines, I guess. And so having that, the work that I do, it does have that really digital um, effect. Um, but if I made it too precise, it would become like digital imagery and it would kind of just feel like graphic design. And whilst you could still play with the colors, I think it would sort of just lose a bit of the life. And I really like to have that human, the little bit of wobble, so that it does have a sort of more emotive um, connection with people as you view it, and so that you can see that somebody has worked on it and that there's yeah, just a bit more of a human connection as opposed to a digi graphic designy kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, and I was working on a mural the other day, and I had my assistant helping me with it, and I thought I thought in areas it was a little bit sloppy. And he pointed it out. He goes, "I love these bits over here,"
Hmm.
and it's like, "Oh, thanks." And I looked. The mural was massive, So for me to actually go and like clean it all up and get it like precise, it would have been an extra day or two's work.
For sure.
But to keep it with that handmade look to it, I realized at first I thought, am I being lazy? And then I realized that no, this is actually essential for it because, in the digital age that we're living in and where we're headed as well, I think that like the human hand in artwork more important than ever.
Yeah, 100%. I think it just feels real.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and it's like I feel like there's yeah, like if you just push it too much into that digital realm, then why not just print it? Why
Mm.
not just print out a vinyl wrap and cover a wall with a poster or something? Like there's I think there's something important in physically creating things and allowing people to see that sort of physical work that goes into it and for it to people to realize that it is a process and uh, there is a human experience behind it.
Mm. Totally, totally. So I take it you're really busy working on your up and coming exhibition Saturation Point
Hmm.
that's opening on June 27th at Magma Gallery in Melbourne.
Yep.
Yeah, how are you going with all that?
I'm getting there. So yeah, there's still plenty of work to be done, and the deadline is very fast approaching. But I'm feeling really good about it. I'm kind of over the past few years, I've done a few shows that have been more focused on sculptural works. So these sort of almost lenticular metal sculptures. And so this show sort of moving back a bit more into painting and this kind of paintings are a large amount of the focus. I think it's going to be 11 paintings all up. Um, and then there's a handful of lights as well. So I'm really excited for these lights for this show. And the focus of it is to create an experience where you step inside these lights and sort of bathe your retinas in projected color, um, because all the lights are different colors. And then you stay in there for 60 to 90 seconds or so, and you step out and you get this after image effect where the world around you changes color due to the light that you've been exposed to. And so it's exciting. I've had this idea for probably 5 years or so. I thought of it a long time ago, and I was like, I went to an exhibition and I saw there's a light work that I just looked at for 15 minutes, like for a very long time because it was really cool and I was enjoying the experience. And then I moved through the rest of the space and everything, all the colors had changed. And I had this idea from that. So, it's exciting to finally have figured out how to actually, um, you know, recreate this idea and do it in a way that people can engage with it. And uh, yeah, it's cool. I'm excited.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see them. Yeah, I missed your last show at Magma. I looked at it online,
Yeah.
but I was out of town for it, so I'm really looking forward to seeing this one in the flesh. Um, so how long have you been working with Magma, and how'd that relationship start?
This is the third solo show I've done with them. Or technically fourth, actually. Third sort of large solo show. And so I've done one each year. I did another solo show that was part of Melbourne Design Week, which was a singular piece that's technically a solo show because it was a solo thing for Melbourne Design Week, but not the sort of large scale solo show. So I've done that. I've done three large scale ones now, and a handful of group shows over the last just under 4 years. Um, and that kind of happened relatively organically. It was kind of funny. Jake from Magma Galleries, the director, he reached out to me on Instagram, um, and sort of said, "Hey, I've got this gallery that I'm opening up really soon. So, you know, I'd love you to come and have a look at the space, and it would be great to have a chat about potentially representing you if you're interested in that sort of thing. Um, and at the time, I wasn't so sure whether I wanted to go down the representation path and have a really sort of tight um, relationship with the gallery, because you're kind of, through doing that, uh, there's, I guess, a level of commitment that you have to give to someone that takes away a bit of freedom to do whatever the hell you want to do, which, can be positive, but I guess it's just, I was a little bit hesitant at the start. Um, and so I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, but then he sent me the address, and it's like 40 meters from my studio at Everfresh. And it was kind of like, all right, I'll be there in 2 minutes. I'll come and have a look. I'll say good day. I'll see what it's like. And I went down and had a look at it. And the space is super cool. And I'd actually been looking at that space like 2 or 3 years earlier, um, on realestate.com, just when I was looking for rental properties in the area. And so I don't know, I already had this like slight connection to it just because it was super cool, and I remembered it, and I was like, wow, it'd be super cool to live in that space. Like, it's so crazy. And so it was just this funny, sequence of events um, that I guess there was like some connection there, and I was like, maybe there's all these things are pointing at giving this a crack. And so, when that all happened, I guess I was like, all right, I'm going to try this out. I'll, do a show here and see how it feels, see what Jake's like, and see what the gallery's like, and how the gallery operates. And a bunch of the other artists on the stable are great artists. And so it was kind of exciting to, do some work alongside people within a very different field of art to the more street oriented um, spaces that I worked in. And, I've kind of just been there ever since, and it's been working.
Yeah, it's a great fit for you. I think the
Yeah,
gallery's it's a beautiful space,
it's awesome.
very different to your standard gallery.
Hmm.
It's like an artwork in itself.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
And have you exhibited much outside of Melbourne, like overseas or interstate?
Um, I have a little bit, not heaps yet. Like, I had some work in a group show in Greece last year, and had some work in an art fair in Paris 2 or 3 years ago. Um, but nothing really extensive. Like, I've done a few murals overseas as well. But I'm kind of still just getting there. I definitely would like to do more stuff overseas, but just haven't made it happen yet, or had the opportunities come along yet. So just, chipping away, and I'm sure they'll come when they do, and I'll be ready for it then.
Oh, they definitely will.
Yeah.
Definitely will. I was chatting with an artist last night, and she was saying how uh, artists, you really want everything to happen right now, but really
Mhm.
when you zoom out and look at like a retrospective show of an artist who's later in life, like the art career sort of works in decades more
Yeah.
than like years or months.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, and I like to sort of think about how many decades I've got left in my art career and what I can do with that time, and
For sure.
realize I don't have to have everything sorted right now.
Yeah,
You know.
100%. Yeah, I'm definitely in no
Mm.
rush. Like, I'm working all the time, and I know that I just have total faith that as long as I keep working, and I keep expanding and experimenting, and pushing my practice in different ways, I'm not stressed about the fact that those things will come. It's
Mm.
and when it comes, that'll be the right time to do it. I don't have to, force my way into different markets, or um, try and push it when it's not happening naturally.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, your studio work's really impressive. It's really different to your mural work,
Hmm.
yet it fits within the same world. Like it's not like two separate artists did it, but you can tell that you're using like a different part of your brain, or there's this I guess, sense of freedom within the work to experiment with new materials and
Hmm.
work with space differently. Um, like, do you like when you think about yourself as an artist? Do you separate your mural work and your studio work, or do you just see it all as one big part of who you are?
No, it's definitely all the same thing. There's just different conversations to be had. Like the way that people uh, integrate with art in a gallery space is entirely different to how you see art on the street, and how you're, you know, I guess how you're operating on the street is entirely different to how you operate when you move into the gallery. It's kind of a bit more of a uh, I guess intentional viewing of work when you step into a gallery. So there's a bit more space in that environment to create work that I guess has more intense conversations or something. Like it's a bit more, there's a bit more depth, or not to say that there's not depth on the streets, but there's a intimacy to the gallery, and so there's a different conversation that you can have, and working with uh, people and how they're moving around a space and how they're interacting with artworks in that sort of intimate space um, is great. And there's so much you can do with color and form and the sort of the base things that I really like to work with that you kind of can't do on the street. But then on the street, there's another conversation as well. There's a different depth to that conversation of um, big, expansive, immersive works that sort of catch people and shift environments that you move through in your everyday, and all of a sudden it's a different thing and a different way of experiencing, the side of this big grey apartment block, or this car park area, or this laneway, or whatever it is. And so, whilst they, can appear, I guess, quite different, they're all sort of still playing with space and movement and interaction and human experience, and um, just through different dialogues, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I was dropping a painting off at a collector's house a few weeks ago, and he had a piece of yours on the wall, and it was a sculptural piece
Oh,
that he
cool.
picked up from Magma
Yeah,
a while ago. But he said it was like about 60 kilos,
yeah.
and it took a few people to get it up on the wall and stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, is this something that you have an idea and you start working towards that vision, and then it ends up being really big and heavy? Is that something that you've considered, or it happens that way?
Yeah, this is definitely a bit of definitely something that I'm trying to iron out. I do have a slight reputation for having ideas and just doing it, and not really considering the logistics of what that means. So, and also, like, there's those sculptural pieces. There's certain parameters with them that you kind of can't get around. Like working with metal, working with you could get around it if you had an unlimited budget, but the precision of them requires lots of tension and very rigid materials. And so to do that, you have to use metal, and then like it just sort of is I guess it just sort of happens. And then over the years, I have slightly refined them. The first edition or first round of those pieces were 60, 70, 80, very, very, very heavy objects. But I'm slowly sort of refining them and working with engineers and different people to help me redesign sort of the structural uh, elements that you can't see, um, that helps to create a little bit of weight loss. Um, but I think it's just a part of making things, and I do a lot of my work in 3D programs, and sort of I'm quite are relatively proficient with some programs, so I can play a lot in these spaces, and then you have these crazy ideas and you want it to be this certain way, and the only way you can do that is if it's made out of metal, or if it's solid cast resin on a large scale, and it is insanely heavy and very silly, but I get the idea out, and I don't know, I'm kind of a bit of a um, I just if I just think doing within reason, getting the idea out is sort of the most important thing, and then you can refine it over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a few artists who work with concrete, and they've got the same issue. And it's like I've spoken to them about it. And they said there's no substitute. This
Yeah,
is what they really want to work with, and
it just is what it
you
is.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, you cut corners. It's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same, and it's
Yeah.
there's sort of a beauty to that as well, like, and I think it's funny those pieces, you know, you, because they're on the wall, you kind of have this context of, oh, great, it's a canvas, it's going to weigh 7 kilos, or it's a large canvas, it's going to weigh 14 kilos, or it's, you kind of have this connotation that it's going to be installed by a single person and it's totally fine. But you'd never think about that if you had like a medium-sized metal sculpture sitting in the front yard. You'd be like, oh, of course, I need to get a big ute, and I need to get a little crane, or I need to get a this or a that. I need to do all these things to get this installed. So it's just yeah, it's just funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've noticed you've been really busy. Well, you've always been busy with murals, but I've noticed you've been doing lots of mural festivals and projects
hmm
lately. You know, like yeah, you're all over the place doing them. Like how's all that been going for you, and how have you been going about getting on the bills for all these festivals?
Yeah, that's been good. The kind of it's a bit of a mixed bag, I guess. I've done a few festivals with Juddy Roller, and I've got a good relationship with them. So the one that I did in Mordialloc, that it was kind of just the perfect spot for me. So as soon as he saw it, he was like, "Well, I got to get Drez on that because it feels like this spot is made for him." Uh, and then I was in New Zealand earlier in the year, and I was going to be in New Zealand anyway, and then I saw that this festival was happening, so I reached out to them saying, "I'm going to be in town. I'd love to paint a piece. I'm not like, is there a wall there that I could paint? Just because I'm going to be around anyway." And they sort of had a wall that was available, and there was no fee or anything involved with that. And then Greece was that I painted there last year. I had no connection to those people, but they reached out to me and really wanted me to come over and do it. Um, and so that sort of happened that way. Um, so it's definitely a bit of a mixed bag in terms of how the opportunities come along. Um, some of them I try and make happen, and some of them just sort of happen, and we work around it, and yeah, it just sort of depends on the project, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
being open for opportunities.
Yeah, open for opportunities, and just trying to, like mural festivals are awesome, because you just get so much freedom when you're working with clients that have their brief and kind of want to have a bit of a say. You sort of have to work towards that a bit, but when you're doing a mural festival, there's the aim of the game is to get artists in the space making what they want to make. And so being a part of those sorts of events and the community atmosphere and meeting different artists and doing something for a local community more so than for a client or for something private or commercial, just a good thing to be a part of.
Hey artist, it's Claire here from the Art Career Academy. If you've been creating for years and you know it's time to go all in on your art career, then Tom and I are here to support you. If you're ready to grow your visibility, build more consistent income, and step fully into life as a professional artist, that's exactly what we help with. Our signature program, Going Pro, is designed for artists who are ready to up-level. We support you with the clarity, confidence, and a solid plan to turn your creative practice into a thriving career. without the burnout or second guessing every move. At the Art Career Academy, we're all about raising up the art community and showing what's possible when artists back themselves. So to get started, grab our free Creative Cashflow cheat sheet. It's packed with 20 tried and tested ways to make an income from your art. Head to artcareeracademy.com to download it now. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
All right, Drez, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yeah, let's hit it off.
All righty. What's one medium you'd love to work with?
Glass.
Yeah,
I'd like to play with
I can
glass.
imagine that.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. I've got some ideas, but I haven't made it happen yet. So yeah, still slowly getting there.
Cool. How do you know when an artwork's finished?
Um, I guess it's a balance of there's a process generally that I follow, so I do that, but then you tweak it until it feels like it's breathing. That's kind of, I guess, the only way that I can describe it.
Yeah, I like that. What's one skill you wish you had?
Probably welding. Welding would help. Yep. If I knew how to do a few more physical things, I think that would be great. Or maybe drafting, maybe just like planning, engineering, drafting stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. Mate, once you get on the welder, watch out heavy objects.
Oh no, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be an absolute disaster.
Yeah. What advice would you give your younger self?
Just keep going, like just don't stop. I feel like that's keep going, do the things that you want to do, and the more uncomfortable you feel doing them, probably the better, the more you will learn from them.
Totally. Do you keep regular work hours?
I wish I did, but I tend to just work all the time. I tend to I do have a bit of a routine. I generally like to get up and exercise in the morning, and then I try and be at the studio by about 9. But I pretty much do that every day. I don't really give myself weekends, much to my detriment. But that's how I work.
Yeah, but at least you're like outside a lot as well. And you're inside and then out, and you've got some
For sure, and
variety.
that's the balance, during like exhibition preparation, you're constantly in the studio, but when you're painting walls, you're in a different location every week, and you're being physical, and it's so yeah, having the balance of the studio and the outside practice is awesome.
I think exercising is really important for
Hmm.
mural artists and studio artists as well. Just the work, because you're working with your body a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I've got some friends who paint some humongous murals, and
Hmm.
they don't do any exercise, and then you see them just afterwards they're just broken,
You're just shattered.
like
Yeah, it
hurting
just
things.
destroys
Yeah.
your body. No, you got to stay fit. You got to,
Mm.
yeah. I definitely try and get a bit of exercise in, and just for your mind to keep your mind, clear and not just bogged down in constant work. It's yeah, it helps me to no ends. Yeah.
Totally. Do you have a dream project you'd love to work on?
Oh, that's a hard one. Nothing like I'd love to do more large scale sculptural work. I really want to do that. Some sort of architectural sculptural work. Integrating uh, art into the fabric of a building, and to the way that a building is constructed. I think, because I always sort of with all my murals, I really like to work with the architecture to some degree to try and reimagine or redefine how a building is presented. Um, and being able to get in there before the building's built and do something that really integrates more so than slapping something on top, I think would be awesome.
Yeah, I could really imagine that. Like,
Mm.
I could imagine what you could come up with working with talented architects.
It'd
That'd
be
be
a
a good
dream.
collab.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who are some of your favorite artists?
Um, Pretty broad, I guess. I really love Catherine Grossi. She's a German artist that does really large scale painted installations, beautiful work. Um, I love the work of Revoke from LA. I love Karl Krasberg. He's a another German artist who does crazy color works. Carlos Cruz Diaz from Venezuela is amazing. Yeah, all very sort of color and experience based people.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Name an artist who you think deserves more shine.
Um, there's plenty of local artists. I think someone like Jason Parker or Ling, those guys they're super hardworking. Amanda Lane, she's super hardworking and does amazing work. Um, Manuel Guerrero, is another amazing artist that's really hardworking. Yeah, there's there's so many, there's so many
Mm.
local people that you just look at and they got their heads down every day, just like just going for it, trying to create and doing really good stuff, and that sort of work ethic. Just I feel like that, yeah, that deserves more shine for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have any future plans or projects in the pipeline?
Yep. Yeah, there's plenty. I got another, I'm going to be doing spring art fair, um, I think that's October. There's a couple of murals lined up over the next, like as soon as I've got this show done, Saturation Point, I'll head to Sydney for a project, and then there's another project in rural Victoria. There's a few solo shows that I'm looking at booking in early next year, early and sort of mid next year. Um, and yeah, there's definitely plenty in the pipeline. Yeah,
Cool. Busy man.
yeah, can't help myself.
Yeah, that's good. That's where it should be. Um, is there anything new that you're experimenting with or dreaming about?
I guess right now it's the lights. The lights are sort of the thing that have been experimenting with, and have kind of just figured out how to get right. In terms of moving forward, it's the main thing I'm trying to do really is cut weight on those sculptures and trying to experiment with different ways of manufacturing them to just, yeah, get it, stop it from being 60 kilos and try and get it down to 30 kilos or something that's a bit more manageable. So that's kind of where most of my experimental brain power is going right now.
Mm, cool. And finally, where's the best place for people to see your work online?
I think right now, Instagram. I'm slowly setting up my website. I will get there one day. But yeah, Instagram is definitely the best spot for it.
What's your handle?
Instagram at Drez, Drez, with full stops in between each letter. So D.R.E.Z.
Cool.
Yeah,
Alrighty. Well, Drez, it's been great. Like, great to sit down and have a chat. I think this is the longest conversation we've ever had, and it's good to finally like get to hang out where we're not in a packed out gallery or something like that.
yes, 100%. Yeah, no, it's been good to have a yarn. Thanks for having me on. Pleasure.
My pleasure. And good luck with the exhibition that's coming up. That's Saturation Point that opens at Magma Gallery on the
June
where is it?
27th. So it's open
There
June
you go.
27 from 6 p.m. is the opening event, and then it'll be open from the 27th of June to the 27th of July.
Cool. All
Yeah.
right. Don't miss it if you're in Melbourne, people. And I'll definitely be there at the opening. I can't wait to see what you've been working on.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, man.